Hospitality MD listeners. Welcome back to another episode. Today I have Kayla Kuehne, who is the general manager of the Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott Tacoma DuPont in Washington. She manages a 90-room property and has been there for a little over 3 years now. Kayla, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
So I guess the you and I kind of got connected because you reached out to me on LinkedIn. You said you've been listening to the show and you wanted to be on. Tell me like why exactly you reached out to me in the first place. Because we get that from time to time. But you know, a lot of our interviewees that we'll actually reach out to invite them on the show. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my AGM actually sent me a link to the podcast, and I started listening. And then COVID hit, and everything kind of went upside down. And so, a lot of the interviews were geared towards COVID and things like that, and just how things are going. And I think what really spurred me was actually those interviews that you were doing with the people that were affected by COVID, and just kind of them talking about their experience in the industry, and what they're experiencing as far as layoffs, and their relationship with their leadership and things like that. And it really kind of hit me pretty hard, because as the general manager of my property, I am who they're talking about, essentially, in a way. And it makes me so sad to hear some of these stories of people that want to do well, that are in it to win it for the long haul, and give their blood, sweat, and tears, just like all of us who are in these leadership roles do, and what we say we want other people to do. But when push comes to shove, it doesn't necessarily always come out the back end. We don't always necessarily put our actual money where our mouth is. And sorry, I won't speak in cliches the whole interview, I promise. But, and it just, yeah, it made me kind of sad, because my AGM and I have worked in other hotels in the industry, and she's actually more experienced than I am. This is only my second hotel that I've ever worked at, and I've actually only been in the industry for 6 years. But I think for myself in that position, and hopefully, fortunately, for the people that I work with, that's a real plus, because I don't have this, decades long history of, well, this is how it's always been done. And I'm just a natural questioner anyways. I hate status quo. I hate doing things the way that it's always been done just because. I always ask why and try and figure out if there's a better way to do it, more beneficial way, or any way we can improve. And I get that some things are done a certain way for a reason, but if you can't tell me the reason, then there's no reason. So
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I think that's very interesting because a lot of the people that we've interviewed on the show, and I think the people that our viewers and our listeners are used to hearing about, are um, full service, luxury, urban kind of hotel leaders. And I've also kind of recently been exposed. I've never worked at a select service or extended stay property. Um, I guess in a traditional sense, I worked at a triple branded hotel that was comprised of a Hilton Garden Inn, Home Two Suites, and Hampton. But it was 466 rooms and very run very much like a full service hotel. But I'm a member of these like Facebook groups, like hospitality and hotel people just kind of ranting and talking about their experiences. And I realized that there's a totally different world going on in the hotel industry when you get to kind of your second and third tier markets and select service properties. And I think there's definitely an independent story of the hotel industry kind of taking place in that. So I'm really, really glad that we have you on. So I want to really start by talking about your experience. You've only been in the industry for 6 years. I want to kind of go back even before that and kind of lead into that by talking about what you were doing before hotels and kind of how you got here.
yeah, sure. I feel like anytime I talk about my history, like my work history and stuff like that, I tend to surprise whoever it is I'm talking about, kind of in the work environment. So like my assistant general manager or my front desk agents or my housekeepers or what have you. And they'll have some story of their past. And I'm like, oh yeah, I worked in that too. And they're just like, you didn't? What? No. I'm like, yeah, no, I came from the ranks. And one of the things that I personally am most proud of is that I don't have a day of college education under my belt whatsoever. So, and that's not to be like that I'm lacking, but it's just I've always been of the mentality that I wanted to start in the bottom and work my way up. And it's just for anyone listening, and I've had to kind of tamper down some of the spirit of some of my associates. My path is not normal. The path that I was able to take in the industry specifically was not normal, as I'm sure you and the other people that run the podcast are well aware of. 6 years starting out in a hotel and then being general manager in 3 years is not normal. But before that, I grew up in a super small town in Washington that I'm sure almost no one listening has heard of, called Cedar Woolley. And I loved it. It was a small town. It was great. Definitely a little lacking in culture and diversity. But the more I grew up and was able to kind of travel, got my license and stuff like that, I was able to kind of branch out more and see more things and just realize that that's what I was craving kind of my whole childhood, not knowing, but I was just craving this diversity and culture of other places. And then I met my husband my senior year of high school, not in high school, but I was a senior. He was not. And we've been together ever since. So 15 years now. And kind of moved back and forth. I was that person that we look at their applications and automatically toss it away because I was a total job hopper for a while, just kind of bouncing around from place to place, trying to find something that I liked, and just none of it really stuck. And I think that part of my life has really also influenced my current life because I promise no more cliches, but I have to do one more. So
please talk however you want to talk. I love it.
People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And that was me for a good probably 2 or 3 years of my life. I went from place to place, and it was just, I think, having the confidence in myself that I know me, I know my work ethic, I know my morals, and I was not willing to work for someone that did not appreciate that and respect that. I think that was more what it was, more so than appreciate, because anybody can say thank you, but really respecting it and saying, okay, yes, you have come in every single time that we have ever called you to come in. I'm going to not call you first because I need to put some pressure on some other people instead of just burning that one person out that's always willing to come in. So yeah, jumped around from a bunch of jobs, worked a bunch of fast food, started out at Target. I was there for 9 months, I think, my senior year of high school. And then went kind of some daycares and things like that. I love daycares, but when I got pregnant with my first daughter, I was like, no, I can't do this 24 hours a day. So worked just a couple little fast food jobs, while I was pregnant and then after I had her, and then it just became unfeasible for me to work and my husband to work and have a kid, because I was essentially going to work to pay for some of daycare and then still take some out of his paycheck to pay for daycare. So I get that struggle too. And I think that's important for me to have experienced that and know where my associates are coming from. The struggle of, yeah, I have a job and yeah, I'm getting paid, but like 90% of my check is going to daycare costs. So I get it. And so I stayed home for about 4 years, and we had moved away from my hometown, moved over to my husband's hometown, and then we moved back to my hometown. And I had been kind of eyeballing this hotel in town for a while, and it was the Fairfield Inn and Suites in Burlington, Washington, and just been eyeballing it. It wasn't there when I was in school. I saw it kind of get built. I think my sister-in-law actually stayed there one time, and it's just kind of digging it. And there had just always been something in the back of my mind. I don't know what it was. I had a friend that worked at a Hampton in my hometown. She seemed to like it. I had never really been one to stay in hotels when I was younger. The first time I ever actually stayed in a hotel, not a motel, but a hotel, I was 19, and we went on a trip with my mother-in-law. And I don't know what it was, but something just drew me in. And it was just this this thing, this pull that I was experiencing. And then when I interviewed for their they posted a front desk agent position, talked to my husband about it. And I said, I think that this could work. They're open 24 hours a day, so we can make the schedule work, if they're willing to work with us. And interviewed for the job and got the job. After I got hired, the operations manager that hired me told me that he damn near hired me on the spot, which is not a good practice. Don't do that. But I don't know. There was just something that was just pulling me in. And once I started and I was working, it just clicked. And I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is what I've been wanting. This is what I want to do. And that was when I really started referring to my job as a career versus a job, and worked my way up in the ranks. Within 6 months, I was acting as front desk supervisor, but I didn't have the title yet. But my GM was treating me like the front desk supervisor, which kind of created some issues. But within a year, I was the front desk supervisor. And then 6 months after that, I was the front office manager, held that job for about a year. And in the meantime, my current hotel was being built. So we had a management company based out of Oregon that was managing our hotel and kind of a smattering of other hotels, mostly down in Oregon. We were the only Washington property at the time. But they were building this hotel and had hired a general manager. And I was very involved in the setup of the hotel from that aspect, being in the same management company and the only Fairfield at the time. And obviously this one's a Fairfield. Helped out that general manager a lot, get this place set up, learn all of the things that come with Fairfield and Marriott and all of that. And didn't work out with her. And so they let her go, and we're hiring for a new GM. And within half an hour of her being released from her position, my GM had already called me and told me that I'm applying for this job. And I spent the rest of like 2 weeks saying, are you sure? I don't know if I'm ready. Are you sure? I don't know if I can do this. What do you do all day? And just, totally doubting myself, because I had never been a general manager before, never been in charge of a property before. I had my front desk agents that I was in charge of, and I was sort of an acting AGM, but I wasn't totally in charge of the housekeeping department. But apparently I was already doing a lot of things that the general managers do, because my previous GM, shout out to Sandy Kish, she's amazing. She had been grooming me the whole time, because she is one of those general managers that thinks that, day one of your GM job, you're getting yourself settled. Day two, you're finding your replacement and you're training your replacement. So, and that's kind of something that I've taken from her as well. I'm working with my AGM to get her ready to be a GM, and kind of same boat. She doesn't necessarily realize how much she's doing that is a GM's job, but we've been fortunate to be able to send her to some other properties to help out. And that's given her a lot of insight and been able to see that, oh yeah, I do know a lot of GM stuff. So it's been good. It's been fun. I love it here. I love my staff. I love my property. And yeah, so in a very long-winded nutshell, that's my history.
Nice. There's definitely a lot of things that you said that I want to address, but the first thing I thought was fascinating, as I've experienced this myself, is when you said that the Fairfield in your hometown you were kind of eyeballing it, and it was just something about it. Like, was that just you, like, oh, you're driving by and you're just kind of like looking at it and you're like, this looks like really cool, or like, just tell me about that gravitation that you had, because I think that's like the first indication of like passion for something that you didn't even know you were passionate about.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of a combination of the whole different things. Like I said, I had never really stayed in hotels. Growing up, there was a little motel in my hometown. And then other than that, there was 2 towns over, there was a Best Western. And that was really it. I didn't grow up around hotels. And then when we started traveling more with my mother-in-law, who's a big hotel nut, like I think she and my grandmother-in-law are like lifetime gold members with Marriott or something. And so stayed in a lot of different hotels. double trees and Marriott properties and courtyards and, all of those different things. And it was just, I don't know, there's just something about being in the hotel that I was just like, this is fun. And I found myself really watching the associates that were at the hotel and just seeing, okay, how are they acting during their shift? Are they liking it? But not even really thinking about the fact that I was watching them. And so when I saw it being built, I was just like, maybe that might be fun. And obviously I knew the Marriott name. And I don't know, there was just something about it that it's so hard to put into words and to really describe unless you've really felt that yourself, that pull to something. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of everything, just sort of like my new experience in staying at hotels. And I had worked at a community college also. So we had a lot of international students that would come in, and, getting to know them and getting to speak with them and learn how to, overcome language barriers and things like that. And, knowing that a lot of travelers obviously stay in hotels, but, a lot of international people, and just kind of that sort of diversity that I was talking about, that I was really looking for. That, well, here's someplace I could get paid to be in, a diverse culture. So
Yeah, that's I mean, I've experienced it. Like I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's certainly like inexplicable to a certain extent, that kind of feeling. And just, hotels are cool places. And the people, the energy is just, it's just a fun place to be in. But your journey typically is, it sounds very atypical compared to
very
most,
much.
like you said. Um, but I also think it's a testament um, to the mobility that a career in hotels and hospitality offers, that's unique to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other industries. And you mentioned when you got your first front desk job, you felt like you finally had started a career rather than
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah.
And you had worked fast food and the community college and stuff like that. You were still an entry level associate when you were working the front desk, but something about it felt like you were in a career more than a job.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that, would it be safe to say that being in a hotel and working the front desk, it made you feel important? It made you feel like you were making an impact, doing something of value?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think just the vast amount of opportunities that lay ahead in the industry in general. It's because when you get into a job, let's say a fast food job, you get hired, you go to work, you take cranky people's order and you give them their food, and they yell at you because it's wrong, and all of these things. And then maybe once in a while you have somebody come in and they're celebrating a birthday, and you have this tiny opportunity to make, a good impact on them, or, you do a really good problem resolution one day or something. And maybe you'll be a shift leader or a supervisor or a manager, and then now you're having to deal with all these other, typically teenagers that they don't really care, they're just there for money and whatever. And then going into the front desk position, where every day, every hour is an opportunity to just surprise and delight and make someone's day that much better. I mean, most of us have had the fortune of traveling and knowing that that can just be hell. I mean, going through the airport, going through security, even before that, having to pack, decide what you're going to take. You have pets, finding a pet sitter, just all this craziness just to go and quote unquote relax wherever you're going to be. And then you've had this whole hellish day of having to travel, and your rental car probably got wrong, and, whatever. And then you get to the hotel and you're just, oh, I'm here. That's all I need. I just needed to be here. And, so we have the opportunity to say, oh, you had a crappy day. Like, what can I do to make it better? Let's make sure you have a really great room. Let's, if you're celebrating something, oh, that's so fantastic. Congratulations. And, call to somebody really quick, or deliver it later, like a couple flutes and champagne or sparkling cider if you don't have licensing, or, even something as simple as here's a $5 market certificate. Go, because I mean, we're select service, again, we don't have a restaurant, but here, go grab a pint of ice cream, and do whatever it is. And so just these little things, and sometimes it's even just as simple as just talking to someone, because especially in the industry, we have a term, and I'm sure most people listening to this are in the industry, but the road warriors. And those are, your regulars, so traveling 300 days a year, and they're, whatever. And those ones, I feel like, are the ones that really just want to talk to somebody. They're away from their home, if they even have it. I've met some that don't even really have a house, and they don't have that typical kind of atomic family to go back to at the end of the day and talk and chit chat. And as we're all experiencing now, Zoom is cool. It's, Facebook groups are cool. It gets you a little bit, but it's not the same as really just being there, being in someone's presence and feeling their energy and having that conversation. And that, I think, is some of my favorite moments in the hotel, is just really getting to connect one-on-one with that guest, or even if it's like a group of them, getting to connect with them and getting to know them and make them really feel like, for whatever amount of time they're there or whenever they come back, they're home. And that's one of the best things for me.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because, like I was saying, we've interviewed a lot of full service general managers and people who run bigger hotels, and one thing that's come up before is, you know, we interviewed the general manager of the London House Chicago. He was our first interview, 452 rooms in downtown. And he said, there are days that I don't see a guest. And, that's when we got into talking about how he trains his team and the role of being a GM in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds to me like, being the general manager of a 90 room select service property in a second tier market is different. It's not going to be the same as the GM of a downtown Chicago 452 room hotel.
Yeah,
Tell
exactly.
me a little bit about what it's like for you to just be a GM in a select service hotel. And again, like, because I think you're going to inspire a lot of people with your story of quick mobility and that your attitude has and your positivity and hospitality has helped you succeed. So like, what is it that you do for people who don't know?
Yeah, like I said, I spent a good like 2-3 weeks peppering my GM with, what do you do all day?
Right.
Um, I'm like, I see you at your desk. What are you doing? And that's, yeah. So there's never a real set plan. You can have a general idea. You can have, all of your time management things, your checklist and all of those things. You can have all of those. But at any given moment, it's just going to go completely out the window. And that's one of the things, as a select service GM, you really have to be prepared for, is that I imagine that it's a bit like being a department head of a full service hotel. So I imagine that you have, because I don't know a ton about full service hotels. I have this idea, having been in the industry, probably have, your restaurant manager and your front office
Yeah,
manager and
let's
your
talk about it.
housekeeper.
I just before I got let go from my previous position, I was a department head of full service hotel. So maybe we can. You got any
Yeah.
questions for me? Let me know. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I imagine my job being a bit like, is if there were one manager that oversaw your your front desk and your housekeepers and maybe a maintenance guy or two. That's pretty much what this job is. So that's, in my mind, that's either if there's a quote unquote heart of house manager or AGM or whatever that looks like. That's what this job pretty much is. You have to be ready to jump in wherever, whenever. And just kind of really depending on what the hotel needs at the time. It's like I said, it's never typical, but if I were to say that there was a more typical day than not, um, I come in, I lead our daily promise meetings in the morning, which is a Fairfield thing, but I feel like most hotels do some kind of daily huddle or shift meeting or something. Um, so we start off with the meeting, and then housekeepers go off and do their amazing difficult job, and laundry goes off and does their amazing difficult job, and front desk goes and stands there. No, I'm just kidding. Um, no, I mean, they're going and making sure that everything's run properly, and I kind of retreat to my office for a little bit, go through my emails, answer any things, um, with Marriott, there's a lot of different programs and processes that we have to check in and check on and make sure everything's up to standard, up to snuff. I can tell you back in March, it was a nightmare all day, every day was a nightmare. And it hit so fast and so hard that we were all just spinning for a good week before we had any idea of, okay, let's stop, let's pause, let's look at this, let's see what we can do. And I felt awful for my associates at the time because everything was changing, not just day to day, but hour to hour. So many new things were being pushed out, so many different stories, angles, best practices, if you can have that in something unprecedented. But our best guess really of what's the appropriate thing to do, what should we be doing right now. But we got through it, and this just another experience under our belts. And but yeah, it's a lot of checking on what other people are doing, making sure that my housekeeping leaders are inspecting the rooms properly, that they've got all of the notes from front desk that they need, that front desk is going through and doing their job, that breakfast has their order done, and all of those things, that touch base with maintenance. What are you working on today? Okay, where were your projects from that you were working on yesterday or last week? In a traditional world, we try to have a leadership meeting once a month at least. We were trying to do it more often, but it just ended up taking up more of our time than was really beneficial. So the once a month was kind of our sweet spot to really sit down, all of us on the leadership team, touch base. Okay, where are we at? What did we talk about last time? What do we need to do now? All of those different things. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard really to give a good description of what my job is, because especially being a select service GM, I have to wear all of the hats. And then even more so recently, because the hotel owner that I work for, we just transitioned out of a company called Hotel Equities, who's a fantastic company. And they run a program that they're the only management company that outside of Marriott has the certification to run this program. It's the ownership coaching program, to where hotel owners can go through this program with Hotel Equities and become certified with Marriott to manage their own properties. So we just graduated. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's kind of fascinating. I never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So we just graduated out of that, and before COVID hit, the hotel owner's plan was to purchase another plot of land and build another hotel. And once that hotel was under construction and we had a new GM hired for it, that he was going to bring me up above property and make me the director of operations for the company. So I'd be overseeing the two hotel general managers, and that's still kind of the plan. It's just a more of like a 5 to maybe 10-year plan. But that's been a really exciting aspect for myself and my assistant general manager, because I've already talked to the owner multiple times, but when and if I ever leave, she's taking over this hotel. And that's kind of really what we're working towards with her, is getting her prepared to take over, make sure that she's understanding the processes and things like that. And, with the hopes that I'll still be with the company and we'll be able to lend her the assistance that she needs, especially when she's first getting her feet wet. But she's got so much experience and she's already doing so much that I don't know if she'll ever need my help, but I'm sure she'll still call me, because when I first got the job, I called my GM like every day, and I was just like, what do I do?
Well, it sounds like, you're trying to, even before she's even in her general manager spot, alleviate that anxiety, like before it even happens.
Yes.
Because when you're, in your previous role as a front office manager and as a front office supervisor, it's like, okay, like I'm in charge of people, but it's not all on me, like I could still like lean on somebody else. Like it's not just my show to be responsible for. It's not my whole reputation on the line, and there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with that. So having gone through it yourself, Tell me a little bit about how you coach and develop your AGM, and kind of about the approach that you take with your property as a relatively green general manager.
Yeah, and like I said, I personally feel like that's a strength for me because I don't have all of these notions and all of this experience of how things have always been done and the industry norms and things like that. And just to kind of preface this part of the conversation, she and I are both really passionate about taking the opportunity that we have right now with being in charge of this property, and then especially with this new and upcoming management company, to kind of change the story a little bit and do our part and do what we can to kind of course correct some things that go on in the industry that we're not a big fan of, that have either that are being done such a way just because they've always been done that way, or that are done for nobody knows what reason or whatever. I mean, I'm a huge questioner. I always ask why, and if you can't tell me why, then I'm probably going to change it. Um,
Definitely.
it's
I'm
just
the
something
same
that
way.
everyone comes to know about me. I, but my philosophy in most things in life is if I ask you why something's done or why you're doing it and you can't tell me, there's no real reason. Um, if you can explain to me and help me understand, even if it's a bit of a stretch or I might have some disagreements, I will respect that, and I will, I'll want to work with you and figure out, okay, is there a better way we can do this, etc. So that's kind of how we approach running the property.
So
Um,
what? Oh, and I'm sorry to cut you
no,
off.
no, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, what is it exactly? You mentioned that there's things in the industry and things that you found that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe that you don't think are applicable in the current climate or in your experience. Tell me a little bit about like the current state as you see it, and where we're at as an industry and what you've observed.
Sure. It might be a little bit easier if I kind of address the things that we're actively trying to change. I mean, I don't have a huge scope of the industry in general.
Hmm.
I'll be the first to admit that. But through my GM training process and my journey, I've come to meet and know a lot of other general managers from all over the country and even internationally. When I was with Hotel Equities, I actually went up to Canada and helped them open up a Fairfield up there. So I got
Oh,
a
good.
little peek up into Canada. Yeah. Fairfield Edmonton Airport. Hi Raj, if you're listening. Um, but
Well, yeah, you have a
I'll be
lot
sure
more
to send it to
experience
him.
than you think. It sounds
I
like you've done a
know.
lot of task force. It sounds like you've done a
And
lot
that's
of that
kind
kind
of,
of
it
stuff.
hits me sometimes. Like I want to say it was like a year or two ago, I was doing um, my month end kind of my budget variance report or my P&L critique, whatever you want to call it. And I was typing out some stuff based on like my star report, my revenue, and all these different things, and talking about NOI and CPOR and all these things. And I talk to myself a lot when I'm working, and I've had to tell everyone, if you can't hear me, assume I'm not talking to you. I will repeat myself if I need to make sure you heard me. Um, but I was sitting there listening to myself, and I was like, man, I know stuff.
Hell
and it's just
yeah.
and it's I feel like a lot of people are like that. Like my AGM definitely is like that as well, where it's just, I let her talk a little bit sometimes, and I just kind of sit there and smile at her, and she's like, what? And I'm like, you're smart. And she's just like, I am, huh? And just it's little things that you just kind of pick up along the way that accumulate to this greater knowledge that you don't necessarily value as much as you would if you went to like a university, because you pay for that, you're in a class, you end up knowing the exact same things, but one you went to school for and one you just learned in the school of life, we'll call it. Sorry, another cliche.
Sure. Well, no, and it's like, yeah, you go and you're like, I got a grade to validate that I've learned something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that initial validation, so sometimes it's like, I actually know a lot more than I think I do,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
which is great. And myself personally, I am a college dropout. Basically, if you could even, I was enrolled in college. Did I ever actually participate? Certainly not.
That's okay.
But yeah, I found that the same experience has applied for me, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it.
Right. Oh, I absolutely would not either. Again, like I said, I had no idea until 6 years ago what I even wanted to do. So why am I going to go to college and put myself into a giant hole of debt if I have no idea what I'm doing? And I'm sorry for any parents whose kids are going through this. Just look at me. I am successful. I promise you. College does not necessarily equal success.
Right.
I mean, if you want to go, great, go have the experience. It's fun, but it's not necessary, especially in this industry where, and I feel like that is another part of this industry that just speaks to me so deeply, is that you don't have to have a college degree to go up in the field. You can learn it along the way. You can pick up you just have to be willing to do the work on your own. And some of that means that you don't get paid to do it, but for a large part, you get paid to learn these things instead of paying someone else to teach you. So
Right.
I mean, that was a huge piece for me. But sorry, I'm also very tangenty sometimes.
No, that's okay. I think this is all like really good stuff. But I do want to give you an opportunity to also talk about the your what you mentioned about how you run your property and your unique
Yeah.
approach to your management style.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that we've really been trying to tackle is this kind of age old adage. And I mean, I know it stems from a long, long time ago and it made sense then, but paying your front desk more than your housekeepers. That is just kind of an industry given. If you're at front desk, you make probably at least $1 more than the housekeepers. And the housekeepers usually make minimum wage. Maybe they get tips, maybe they don't. And they have arguably the hardest job in the hotel. I tell mine regularly, I could never do your job. I did not start in housekeeping. I could never do that job. I would love, if I ever went back line level, I would do laundry in a heartbeat, but I could never do a room attendant's job. And that to me is so outdated and antiquated. And it stems from a long time ago. I don't even know when, honestly, probably like 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. But having the computer skills was valuable. You had to go to school to get computer skills, and it was something that was of value. And so they got paid more because they probably had to go to school and pay for school, and you got to pay them more because they went to school. But every 9-year-old now has a smartphone, has a computer, has a laptop. Schools are being taught online, literally now.
Right.
But so it's not necessarily as marketable of a skill. Is there still value in it? Is there still, a need for having somebody who is computer savvy, who's comfortable on a computer, comfortable on the phone? Yeah, it is. But it's not nearly as hard to find as somebody who is willing to go strip bloody sheets or, clean up vomit on the floor or deal with pet hair and fleas and work hard and clean the entire room within 30 minutes and make it completely spotless with a smile on their face and get paid next to nothing, depending on where you're at. And so that's one of the main things that we really try and change. And we had it topsy-turvy for a little bit, and we were hiring our housekeepers on higher than our front desk. And there's no real reason that we didn't do it. I think it was more, or stop doing it, but I think it was more kind of to help myself. We just hire all new associates at our base wage. That's it. Everybody gets hired at the base wage. And then if you have experience, or if you pick it up really quickly, or you excel or whatever, then you have an expedited potential for increase. But I don't take anyone saying that they have experience at face value, because I've been burned, and I'm sure if you've hired people that claim they have experience, you have been burned as well.
And sometimes it actually can be a detriment
Yes.
because just like you said, we've always done it this way. Sometimes with experience comes bad habits.
Oh yeah.
And and I think especially, and this is something that Greg and I have talked about a little bit on the show in the past, is that like if you have somebody who's gone from, let's just take a front desk agent as an easy example, from front desk agent to front desk agent to front office supervisor to front desk agent at multiple different hotels, that tends to be a red flag in the sense of, okay, why aren't you growing? Yes, you have experience, but there's something there, and granted, obviously nothing wrong if you people who just don't want to have any other responsibilities. I get it, being a general manager and being on call and have to go in and do night audit if there's
Yep.
nobody to show up. Yeah, like that sucks, and not everybody's up for that. But generally, when hiring for an entry level role, sometimes you get the best candidates of people who are seeing it fresh for the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually don't look at anyone having experience as a plus. It's not something that I look for. What I look for is the jobs that have the traits that I'm looking for. So typically with housekeeping, I want them to have work jobs where they are on their feet and they're moving and working hard. So some of my best associates have come from the Amazon warehouse that we have next door.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving boxes, they're in a warehouse, it's fast paced, they're used to moving and using their body. Or restaurant servers. My housekeeping manager, who just left and moved home to New York, came from a restaurant, and she got hired as just a housekeeper, a room attendant, and worked her way up. She became our supervisor, and then she became our manager, and she was fantastic. And she had no experience in housekeeping before this whatsoever. So I look for jobs that have the traits that I want. Some of my front desk agents have been baristas previously, because
Nice.
I'm a little biased because I was a barista for 6 years also, but um, it's fast paced, it can be very stressful, and you're dealing with grumpy people. And what does that sound like? The front desk.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So
My twin brother, he works at the largest Starbucks, actually largest coffee shop in the world, actually, which just opened up in Chicago. And the stories that I hear from him are just crazy sometimes. And I'm like,
my phone
and
is
just,
not right.
well, yeah, and even like the way that they have their leadership hierarchy structured and things that he's told me, it's like sounds a lot like a hotel. And the skills are certainly applicable. Um, One other thing too is I think you'll be happy to hear that, at least in the markets that I'm used to, excuse me, the wage disparity between room attendant and front desk agent is not existent for the
Good.
most part, at least in what I've experienced.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's a
Oftentimes,
different story in full service.
well, and I think part of it um, might be when you have a much smaller pool of labor to choose from, like in a second tier market, it's almost being used as a way to take advantage of people who
Yeah.
wouldn't have anything else to go and do, or wouldn't have any other jobs to do, or maybe aren't the best with the native language and speaking English
Right.
and stuff like that. And it's unfortunate that it's turned out to be that way.
Right.
So I was actually shocked and saddened to hear that you, and I'm sure so many other properties, are still like, how antiquated is that, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's just it makes me sick,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh, absolutely. 100% absolutely. And it's one of those things where, and I'm not familiar with the full service world, but in the select service world, housekeeping's turnover rate is astronomical.
Hmm.
And when I hear someone say, "Oh, I can't keep housekeepers. I can't keep housekeepers." And my first question is, "Well, what are you paying them?" Because you're
Yeah.
asking them to do a ridiculously hard job. It's physically hard on their body. It's disgusting a lot of the time. And you're paying a minimum wage. They can go work at a warehouse or be a DOT sign holder, the Department of Transportation sign holder out on the freeway for like $30 an hour. You think they want to clean up someone's shit for like 13? No. No one wants to do that. And so you're going to get the people who can't get hired other places. If that's all you're paying, if that's all you're bringing to the table is a minimum wage job, that's what you're going to get is minimum
Well,
wage.
right. And then at the same time, the high expectations that come along with working in a
Ah,
hotel environment, especially like when you're talking about a Fairfield Inn and Suites, like that's a brand that's taken years of expectations and being built. Like the expectations are sky high, because especially when you're, obviously, yes, full service hotels as well, but when you're a select service hotel, it's like, okay, you have
What do we have
a
to
bed and
offer?
a shower, like it's got to be
Yeah.
clean. It has to be clean, and you're going to pay somebody minimum wage and have those sky high expectations. It certainly, I no wonder the turnover rate is astronomical. I will also tell you just a little bit of insight for you. I find that to be not the case in the Chicago market,
Good,
in the full service
good,
arena. Um, and usually, they'll have nice, comfortable wages. A
good.
lot of the union politics play into it as well with seniority and everything like that. So
Yeah, and that's
you
one of
have
the
people
aspects of
who,
full service that we really don't get in select service unless you have like a management company that has a ton of hotels in an area or is like a Marriott managed hotel. We don't have unions. So
and
it's a one person fighting for themselves.
yeah, and I know that you mentioned you were able to kind of fix the problem right at your hotel with that pay disparity for new GMs, new managers, just anybody who's curious, you know, and for those who don't know, it's not like your money, right? So Kayla's
Right.
the general manager, right? But she's not paying the
My
people from
money.
her own pocket. How do
Yeah.
you convince your ownership, and how did you approach that actually was able to help your cause? Because I think that's a skill that a lot of people undervalue in a general manager, or maybe they don't think that it's part of their job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and especially in a select service hotel, the general manager's typical communication with the owner, I would imagine, is much higher than a or a full service hotel. At least for most of the staff, like everyone on my staff knows our hotel owner,
Mm-hmm.
even before he became our management company, if you will. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's not something you can fix right away. It's especially if you are coming into a new property. It is something where you kind of have to prove that you know what you're doing first. You know, the sorry, I really love cliches. The proof is in the pudding. Um,
Yeah.
but it's do your job, do it well, kick ass, make them see your value and respect that, and then bring your ideas to the table and don't be afraid to do it. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. And you're going to be right back exactly where you are this moment. They're not going to decrease everyone's pay because you asked to pay them more, but
Sure.
make a case, do the research, look at, call, literally use your cell phone, call the other hotels. Are you hiring for housekeeping? What do you pay? Call not just your neighborhood hotels, but call the next city over, because most people are willing to drive 45 minutes to an hour to go to a job if it's going to pay a dollar or two more. And so that's one of the things that I also have benefiting me is that we're actually kind of sort of in a tertiary market, so a third tier market, because Tacoma is a second tier market, but we're outside of Tacoma. But Tacoma has a higher minimum wage. Just the city of Tacoma has a higher minimum wage. And so I make the case we're competing with that. If we want a labor pool, that's where the labor's coming from, is in between us. It's not, the people in Tacoma are not working in Tacoma necessarily, but it's all the people around it, because it's cheaper to live outside of Tacoma and work in Tacoma. Just like I'm sure in Chicago, you've got your suburbs, people live out there and then work in the city because you get paid more, but it's cheaper to live outside. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's how it really is in a lot of like first and second tier markets. Um, but so that definitely helps make the case, is know your market, know what they're paying, and know what else they have to offer. Is everybody else offering benefits? Is everyone else offering a 401k? Is everyone else offering sick pay and PTO and all of these different things? You know what it is. And sometimes it's not that you can offer them, more money per hour, but it's other things that you can offer them, like benefits and PTO and sick leave. And not to speak down of it anymore, and I'll get more into this a little bit later, but the culture that you create on your property is huge, almost more important than what you're paying them. And I would say it's a very, very, it's like one and a half in what they're looking for
Mm-hmm.
in a job. But they don't know it. And that's the thing. Like I said, when I was a job hopper, I didn't know that that's really what I was looking for, was a job that had a culture of learning and celebrating people and just really valuing the people that you have. And I'm in this position now, and I get to cultivate that property, or that culture, and make it what I want. And you know, I I tell people in the interview, you know, no one's going to be like, "Yay, I get to go to work." But I want you to be happy and satisfied with the job that you have, and feel good coming to work, and feel good going home, and not have this, "Oh, I have to go to work. Maybe I have a fever? I feel sick."
Right.
You know, and they're just constantly calling out. So, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, no, definitely. The culture that you build is, and especially in a hotel environment, I feel like it should be easier to do, because if you think about it, just the job itself and the environment lends itself to be one of the easiest environments to create a positive culture,
Yeah.
because of the teamwork that is necessary to run an operation with so many moving parts. You know, obviously, like, okay, like, I haven't worked in a fast food restaurant. However, I've eaten at fast food restaurants. So
Nice.
correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, a fast food restaurant, yeah, there's different parts to the operation,
Mhm.
but everybody's still in the same area, you know what I mean? And like, there's still teamwork involved, but not to the level of having a brigade of independent room attendants on their own cleaning different things, or in a front desk staff, and then you start getting into food and beverage and sales and revenue management and all that stuff. Hotels, just the teamwork that it cultivates naturally, makes it a great space to have a wonderful culture in the hotel.
And the teamwork,
um,
I feel like, is almost more important when you're talking about something like a hotel, because in fast food, if the communication fails or the teamwork fails, it's immediate. You know it immediately. You're out of whatever it is that you need to serve your guests, or your whatever the reaction is going to be is immediate. But in hotels, if somebody drops the ball, it could be hours, it could be days later that you're finding out. And now you've got a pissed off guest because their room wasn't cleaned, or they got checked into a dirty room, or your night auditor promised something and didn't pass it on. And so now they're coming to the desk and they're pissed as to why you don't have, their portfolio printed out in color ready to go for them right away. And they're going to be late for their meeting now because they have to wait for you. So it's so important to have that teamwork and have that communication, because there can be such a delay in the cause and effect.
Well, and I think it's kind of like the chicken and the egg scenario. Like, good communication and good teamwork cultivates a good culture, but people are more likely to work together when they're in an environment that, is culturally positive to,
Yeah.
and makes them feel good to come to work. I've
Yeah.
definitely experienced both, and it's a shame that, there's a lot of really beautiful hotels out there that are being run very, very poorly. And but yeah, I mean, it's good that there's people out there like you who are trying to break the mold of what's been traditionally done in the hotel industry for forever now. So we are kind of running out of time here for the interview, and I think there's definitely more to talk about, but we'll have you on the show another time. We can go more into it.
Yay.
But for the meantime, is there anything else that you wanted to say? Any other last final words before we end the interview today?
Yeah, if I was to give anyone that is struggling with their property, just kind of a little nugget or a little piece of advice, is to just some leader to leader. If you're having problems with your staff or your associates and they're just not getting it, they just don't care, or things are just constantly being done wrong, my first step is always just to stop and look at me. What, and it's not necessarily the lead by example kind of a thing, but it's, have I done everything needed and necessary and that I can do to make sure that they know their job, that they have the tools to do their job? Because especially in the select service world, sometimes, I mean, we don't have a team of front desk agents. We have a crew, essentially, if we're going to put it in different terms. I
Sure.
have right now, I have my two front desk agents and my two night auditors, and then me and my AGM, and that is our front desk backup. So somebody quits, well, guess what? I'm working front desk until we hire somebody. So then when we tend to get in this hiring phase, and we hire somebody and we want them to get started right away, because now I can't do my job because I'm working the front desk and whatever. and we just kind of rush them into it before they're really ready. And so just really going back and starting from square, not necessarily starting from square one, but reviewing from square one their training. And I tell my new people a lot, especially, that I might be repetitive when I'm talking to you, but I'm telling you stuff so that I know I told you, so that I know that you know this. And because maybe somebody else didn't tell you, or told it in a way that you didn't necessarily understand, or what have you. And really meet your associates on the level that they're comfortable with. My last director of operations that I had, when I my first meeting with him, he asked the question that I have now adopted, and it's, whenever you have a new associate, what is your preferred method of communication? And it's something so simple, but nobody asks it. Do you want a text? Do you want a phone call? Do you want an email? Do you want a note? Whatever. Do you want face to face? Whatever it is, what is your preferred method of communication? And you have to be willing to mold yourself to what they need, even if it's you delegating that. Like for me, I'm very fortunate to have a great AGM, and I have a front desk lead. So if that person needs face to face, I can say, okay, hey, this person needs a face to face on X subject. Can you do that the next time you see them? Because they're a lot more likely to see like a night auditor or something than I am, because I have to be here kind of, unfortunately, during quote unquote office hours. But just really making sure that you're getting the information to them on a level that they're comfortable with. And then, yeah, just creating a learning environment. And I tell my new hires, I expect questions for at least 3 months. I expect a lot of questions for at least 3 months, and giving them a time frame really, really helps, because otherwise they're like, well, I'm done with my training technically, and I'm working on my own. I feel like I should know this already. And then they don't ask, and then something happens, and then now it's a bigger issue. Whereas if you just create this learning environment where it's not a 3 strikes you're out kind of a thing. So even if they do screw up and they have a guest that's pissed off and you have to go deal with it, just take that and say, hey, thank you for handling the situation in the moment. In the future, let's talk about how we can handle it a little better. And not writing them up for it. I mean, I think write-ups are pretty stupid in my personal opinion. I think writing people up is kind of stupid, and we're not in grade school anymore. So
Yeah, I think one of my biggest red flags when people don't ask questions, it's there's so much to learn.
yeah.
Like hotels are so complicated. Um, my producer and co-host Greg, he was my first ever hotel manager. He hired me with no experience, and I'm sure he could speak on just the sheer annoyance of questions. Like it was almost
Love
irritating,
it.
but he
Love it.
was so gracious and answered all my questions and helped me learn. And that's the only way to do it, is like every front desk agent should be able to train somebody in detail about the why of everything.
Yes.
Just, kind of like we said.
Yeah.
But anyway, Kayla, thank you so much for being on the show. I definitely want to have you back because I feel like there's just much more to talk about. For everybody listening, Kayla runs all the social media for her hotel. So keep up to date with what they're doing at their property. You can search Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott, Tacoma, DuPont. And to connect with Kayla on LinkedIn for more content, it's KaylaKuehne. And you all have been listening to Kayla Kuehne on Hospitality MD, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.